Hi, and welcome back to Higher Hertz. I'm Justin Leopard, your online cello teacher, here today with a lesson where we're going to delve a little deeper into actually getting started playing. If you've been with us so far, you've seen kind of how to get a cello and some of the basics of getting your bow hold in place, some of your posture and all of that stuff. And today I'm going to go a little deeper into a couple of exercises that are kind of pre-scales. So these are going to be exercises for string crossings, exercises for getting your left hand situated. It's kind of not that great to just start trying to play things when how you put your finger down isn't even yet established, or whether, actually just playing, moving the bow at the same time as putting one of your fingers down isn't yet established. Those sort of things can make even simple scales and simple songs feel like they're more difficult than they need to be. So that's the importance of doing this step. It's something that you can do when you're starting to play the instrument that's technically based, not as complicated as scales, complicated in the sense that you have to put everything together in order to get scales to work, but simple enough or important enough that they will carry you through all of the stuff, simple or not. So let's start with the bow, because this is what we had talked about the last time, getting our hold notes going. We had talked about pronating the wrist, finding a comfortable bow hand. I won't go into everything in detail in this video because you can go watch that video. But when we were doing that, we were just talking about being on one string. Now, one of the most important differences between different strings, other than their thickness, is that because the bridge of the cello is curved, the fingerboard's curved, the strings are all at a slightly different angle. The bow will be at a slightly different angle on each one of the strings. So you can see how in the C string, when my bow is, straight, it's actually, if I were to be at the same level of on the A string, my bow would be hitting the cello down here. And I don't know if you can see it, but hitting the cello down there. So, you don't want to be wildly off with your strings, and you don't want to be pulling at an angle because, well, one, you're not going to get as good of a sound, but as you've also noticed, as I play at an angle, the bow ends up moving towards the bridge. So in order to have a good sound and to maintain a consistent contact point, which is what we call where the bow hits the string, we're going to need to account for that. So the way that I was taught to think about this is about rowing your hand. Now you can see a little bit of finger motion too. My hand is going up a little bit, but it's less about moving your hand wildly than it is about, you can compromise the motion, because if you just find your C string position and then you just push your hand forward, you'll end up on the A string only slightly overcorrected. So finding a way to move that's around the circle here, as opposed to thinking of it as a vertical circle, is going to help a lot. And then all you need to do is, as you're doing your normal bowing exercises and you change directions, or it could be on the down bow, you're just going to practice all of the string crossings themselves. So in addition to the C, you might up, down, up. Okay, now we're going to go over to the G. We're going to try to make that transition as smooth as possible. We're going to go G to D, right? We're also going to want to do it the other way. And that's going to be a theme of these exercises, is basically if there is a permutation or variation that you can make, you should do that, because you'll encounter those. You'll encounter going down and then, or going up and then going down on the next string. You'll encounter that. It's also good to practice short. But we'll get to different bow strokes a little bit later. For now, all you would need to do is practice the C string, and when that's good, go to the G string. And then practice going down. And so this would be something that you would do after first just practicing open strings without caring about the string crossing, because you want to be able to first play each open string well, and then work on the string crossings. Now, the way that you would practice the other bowing is to either do one extra bow or to change strings sooner. So you would go down, let's stay here, right? And so on. So this doesn't take that long if you're just doing whole bows. It doesn't take that long to make it all the way through the permutations, that is. But you really can't spend too much time, especially at the beginning, just really trying to dial in your sound and trying to think about different ways to get good sound. One of the best ways to get a good sound, for example, is that you'll start to realize when you do this is that you don't have to have the same like weight in the string throughout the note. It doesn't have to be like, you see, I get some glitches there. What happens is, as if the string is too consistent of of a pressure, and it's not necessarily the right weight or pressure in the string for the speed you're going, you're going to get some artifacts in the sound. This just has to do with using microscopic hooks on hairs to pull steel strings. I mean, as I've said before, and I'll say again, like, it's an unstable instrument. So what can be helpful is, we've talked about setting the bow, really getting in the string before starting. Well, once we've started, we can be lighter with the bow and then come back down in advance of changing the string. So the extreme of this would be, right? But of course, we never actually stop having contact with the string. It's just, so it's this, it's a subtler thing. I'm not sure if it's possible to really see what's happening, but you will feel it. And hopefully the image here is helpful for how you can just get different types of sounds that actually sound good. You can really shape it. Shape meaning, both how it sounds, but you can really use the bow to literally be doing that as well. Okay? So that would be how I would recommend practicing string crossings, is to add them to your practice. You're already practicing the bow hold. You're already trying to get a good sound. Adding changing strings, okay? And this is going to become especially useful when we learn our first few songs together. I don't even know if there is a standard cello student song that doesn't use at least 2 strings. So string crossings are probably more intrinsic to the instrument than even shifting, which is also just, I mean, you can't even play in certain keys without shifting. So we're going to get to that. Let's move over to the left hand. Now, which we haven't really talked about much yet, and as you're playing with the left hand, as you're starting to try to learn scales, it can be a little frustrating when you either know what the fingering should be, or you generally know where the note should be on the instrument, and yet it still just doesn't sound that good. It's not that in tune. You think it's right, but it doesn't sound that good, and it's not really that easy to figure out exactly what's going on. Unfortunately, we don't have frets. We don't have keys. While we can put stickers on the instrument to generally know where we're hitting, at the end of the day, it's so much about muscle memory with this instrument. I mean, it's kind of freaking insane. Like, it's insane. So one of the coolest exercises that you can do for this in advance is just to start strengthening your fingers by systematically going through every single combination of fingerings. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Basically, I actually feel like in some ways it's easiest to start in 4th position. So let's start by doing this here with our thumb in the crook of the cello, first finger above that. It's an E, and it's also harmonic. So if you just touch the string lightly, in the same location, you'll have a harmonic that's an octave higher as a way to test. We're going to do the same thing an octave lower in a second. So, but what I like about this is just that, it's a very comfortable place for the hand to be. You shift down, you feel that 4th position, you know where you are. Now, you shouldn't hold your hand against the cello. I don't mean to be misleading. You should still hold it, with just the structure of your hand. But that's why 4th position is easy to find. So, as we've talked about, your shoulders to your elbows should be extremely symmetrical or very close to symmetrical between your two hands. But whereas your right hand is going to come in and down, your left hand is going to move up or down as the context depends, and your elbow is going to have to follow it to some small degree. But you don't want to have your elbow too far in. You don't want to have it be overcompensated out. You're going to want to just first play with where do you put your elbow and fingers so that you can get a balanced hand. I think in fourth position it's harder to get a perfectly straight wrist, but very straight wrist. And as you'll notice, as you just start trying to put your fingers down, each finger requires like a slightly different balance on its own. Or rather, if you wanted to try to put all your fingers down, you'd probably have to kind of all angle them kind of towards the third finger perhaps, or something like that. So that's what we want to try to address in this. We want to try to be able to get our fingers comfortable with moving, and we also want to be able to just not have to squish them down or get our hand too in or be too flat. None of that stuff. We want nice curved fingers, mostly the tips of our fingers. Very rarely will we, flatten our fingers, but it is good nonetheless not to be too pointed, to have a little bit of flesh that goes on the string. So the way you do these permutations is really simple. You start on 1 and you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 3, 1, 4. Okay, and now we're going to do starting from 2. And finally 3. There's only one of these. Now there's a few different ways that your fingers could all kind of work together, but if you're already systematically going through all of the adjacent notes that your fingers could be playing, you're pretty much playing not just all of the notes of the hand, but realistically pretty much all of the changes that you're going to be making to your hand. So that's what makes this a really powerful exercise. Now, doing this sort of thing comes largely from a book by Janos Starker, who used to teach at Indiana University, and he was very, very into technique, and he would want you to be very rigorous about applying this in every single position with perfect evenness and and so on. But I don't even think you necessarily need the bow. I just think first thinking about how your fingers are going to come into the string and be able to have strength to them, because it's a little bit difficult. Like I remember I used to have a lot of problems with my pinky collapsing. This is the common thing. The pinky especially takes a while to develop some sort of strength for that finger. And I do want to say that as you're doing this, while your first finger's down, the others are not down, right? Because then they'd be playing a note. When you have your second, third, and fourth finger down, it shouldn't be the only finger. This is incorrect. Always have the previous fingers down, and this will just add strength. You don't want to, just be on your pinky. It's just so weak. You want to be able to have all your fingers help with that. So let's go down an octave. This one might be a little bit more useful in terms of beginner rep, but I feel like this one is a little easier because your arm isn't quite as far back. But what this also does up here is it allows us to find the same notes in first position on the D string. And then one thing that you can do if you want to have another step involved is combine the two exercises. So you can be doing the 1-2 fingering. And this will give you some of those subtle variations in string crossings when your finger is down, when different fingers are down. When your fingers are down, it means that the strings are different lengths. It means that you're kind of working with a slightly different instrument. Another one of the many things that can cause problems as you're playing. You know, when you're playing that, there's quite a lot of resonance because you're playing two notes that are part of a C major chord. So you have, you know, that working for you. When you play 1-3, well, the 3, which is a C sharp, might ordinarily ring out with the A string, but it's on the A string, so that you're not going to get sympathetic resonance from the A string. You're certainly not going to get sympathetic resonance from the C string because it's only a half step off from C sharp. And similarly with G, you're a tritone away. Tritone is 3 whole steps, so basically a flat fifth. So, you know, you can hear that one is intrinsically a little less resonant, a little less glorious. That's something you have to account for. And that's something that one of the things we talked about earlier with not necessarily being in the string as equally. So when you're playing the C, maybe you play simpler. By contrast, you play it a little bit more bow when it is the C sharp. And, you know, maybe those sound good. I think they might sound a little bit better, but, you know, the point of this practice is not necessarily perfection, rather elusive goal, especially the more you really think about what it actually means sitting in front of the instrument. What are truly the imperfections? But just to keep going deeper with it, try to keep going deeper into the sound, figuring out what's possible on your instrument. And I think most importantly of all at this step, just doing it, just hammering in some muscle memory and still just having fun. You know, do these exercises and then try playing something. Do these exercises and just, you know, if you start practicing scales, use these to just warm up to scales so that they aren't as hard. If you're trying to practice music for school, do this first. It will help a lot. If you just do these 2 things, like if you're sitting, you know, like in school orchestra, you never had a private lesson, you're like, if you're in that sort of situation, man, just do this for like 10 minutes. If you have like 5 or 10 minutes before rehearsal, you will be amazed at how much easier it is to play because you have established for yourself the technical foundation of how you're going to do that. So hopefully this video has been helpful for all those things. We're going to get to scales in the next video. Really excited about that. We hope you stay with us for all of the cello lessons that we're going to offer you guys. Higher Hertz is the channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Once more, I'm Justin Leopard, also known as the Vagabond Cellist. You can find my own videos on YouTube. For now, that's all. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you guys next time.